Okay, I realize that I'm late to this topic. I realize that literally nobody cares about it anymore. I missed the window where I could maximize the potential views, whatever, blah, 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 blah. I recognize all of that. But I am genuinely triggered. Okay? You might as well paint my hair blue and give me they, them pronouns, motherfucker. Because I gotta make a video about it, okay? So, if you don't know, Christopher Stuckman, he is one of the OGs of YouTube movie reviewers, right? It's like him and Jeremy Johns and like Red Letter Media, I would say. They're like also maybe the Nostalgia Critic. I don't know. I never watched that guy. But for me, the holy trinity of movie reviewers are Chris Stuckman, Jeremy Johns, and Red Letter Media. That's sort of who I grew up watching. And then like 2 years ago, Chris Stuckman made a video called Moving Forward where he announced he didn't do any of this secretly. He didn't do any of this in a dishonest manner. He made a straightforward, honest video stating, "Hey, I'm a filmmaker now, or I'm trying to make a movie, and I don't feel like making negative videos anymore. For moving forward, I'm gonna make videos about movies that I personally enjoy."
As far as movie reviews, I'm still going to talk about movies. What I'm not going to do anymore is trash filmmakers. I just don't enjoy it anymore. I don't enjoy talking negatively about film. So I am going to distance myself from film criticism and embrace film appreciation.
And I'll start there. I've seen people saying like, Chris Stuckman, you're disgracing the movie criticism. It's your responsibility to talk about movies you don't like and to criticize them. And I'm just like, bro, what are you talking about? First of all, it's his YouTube channel. He can do whatever he wants with it. Okay, if he wants to start making videos talking about his favorite butt plugs and doing butt plug reviews, he can do it. He has no responsibility to talk about any movie that he doesn't want to talk about. The only responsibility that any of us have on our platforms is to be just honest. That's it. As long as you're honestly talking about what you're talking about, ain't no problem. And Chris Stuckman, as far as we can tell, is being honest about his opinions. He only reviews movies that he likes. He openly said this 2 years ago that that's what he was going to do. If he dislikes a movie, he's just not going to talk about it. If he wants to be a filmmaker and he just doesn't feel like making negative videos about other filmmakers' work, I see no issue with that. As long as he is upfront and honest about it, which he has been. Okay, so that's where Chris Stuckman is at. Now let's move into the present day. Last week, he made a video about Madam Web. This is a movie that is very bad. If you want to go watch my review of it, I said as much. Chris Stuckman obviously watched Madam Web, and he felt like he wanted to make a video about it. And in his video, he remained consistent with what he said 2 years ago. He said, "Listen, I don't bash filmmakers anymore. I try not to do negative reviews. So this isn't a review of Madam Web. This is just me talking about the industry and talking about how we end up with bad movies like Madam Web."
So I had to go see it on Valentine's Day, and I thought to myself, probably not going to do a video for this one based off of what I've heard, since I do try to keep it mostly about film celebration on this channel. Having seen the film, I'm going to tell you that this is not a movie review of Madam Web. What I am compelled to make a video about is something that I heard pretty much every writer, some directors, and most actors bashing last year, and that is movie studios.
And in the video, he just goes through what he thinks is the problem with the industry and why it leads to movies like Madam Web, right? He believes that executives and just the suits in charge are making a lot of these decisions about these movies, even creative decisions, and they aren't giving filmmakers and screenwriters the freedom and the liberty to actually make great films. Some of the reasoning that he gives is just the fact that all these Sony Marvel movies like Venom and Morbius and Madam Web feel cookie cutter. They feel too similarly terrible and that he feels like it can't possibly be just the filmmakers making bad movies, that executives have to just be mandating certain things.
This video is inspired by essentially every live action film that Sony has had some involvement in since Spider-Man 3 in the Spider-Man verse. That being Spider-Man 3, The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, Venom, Venom Let There Be Carnage, Morbius, and Madam Web. This is about how Sony treats their characters and their properties, and more importantly, how they treat their filmmakers, and what exactly is going on. The consensus is that the live-action, Sony-based Spider-Man universe movies have not exactly all been home runs.
And that he believes the solution to this is to just get talented filmmakers and let them cook.
And that's what we're getting with Oppenheimer. It's what we're getting with Barbie. When you see a movie where it's like, okay, that creator, Greta Gerwig, took an IP, Barbie, and made a completely original movie out of it, and it became the highest grossing film of the year, and it's nominated for multiple Oscars, even though she totally should have been nominated for director. They hear that. They understand, all right, so IP-ish, but original. Got it. And that's okay. Like, there's so many openings for filmmakers to take very original ideas into things. In an ideal, perfect industry, the filmmaker-studio relationship would be more of an understanding, loving relationship. But the problem right now is that so many studio executives, people who are making the decisions, did not come from a place of creativity. They were potentially managers or agents or people outside of the creative space in Hollywood who worked their way into a place where they're now telling creatives what to do.
And here's the thing. That's not a controversial position. Literally, everybody has been saying this since The Amazing Spider-Man 2 days. Literally, everybody talks about how cringe Sony is and how, oh, they should sell the rights back to Marvel because they can't make good movies. Everybody says this. And the reason why people are getting upset at Chris Stuckman, and there can only be two reasons. Either A, you suffer from some kind of mental illness, and hey, if that's you, try not to take offense to this. Or two, you just didn't watch the video, and you only watched the out-of-context Twitter clip. And even that out-of-context Twitter clip that went viral includes enough context that you shouldn't be mad at it. So here are just some things that I've heard people say about Chris Stuckman's video. They say that Chris Stuckman refuses to say that Madam Web is bad. And in their defense, I do think that it's the case that Chris Stuckman never, outright says that Madam Web is bad. If you actually watch his video, it's obvious that he does not like the movie. When Chris Stuckman says that he's not going to review movies that he does not like, right? When he says that he's not in the business of bashing filmmakers anymore. And then he says, I'm not going to review Madam Web. Okay, can you rub the two remaining brain cells in your head and deduce, he probably doesn't like Madam Web. What more do you need him to say? Another thing that I've heard people say is that Chris Stuckman isn't giving Madam Web a negative review because he's trying to get in good with Hollywood. And again, this goes back to you either didn't watch the video or you are suffering from some kind of mental illness. It's one or the other. In the video, he criticizes Sony. He even talks about Blumhouse.
The way I view the two Spider-Verse movies is kind of the same way I view The Invisible Man and Split and Get Out and other films that Blumhouse has produced. Because Blumhouse has produced a lot of other movies as well. But those three really do seem like, damn, where'd those come from? Some studios have really good instincts, and they can pick filmmakers and stories across the board that, for the most part, are going to be at least decent. I look at a studio like A24. Pretty much most of their movies, if you see a trailer for an A24 film, you can probably bet that it's not going to be terrible, that it's at least going to be decent, and maybe even really good. And I don't feel that way with every single studio. It's like a flip of a coin. You could get one of their best efforts, or you could get another one. And I do think it comes down to the filmmaker they're working with and whether or not they back off and give that filmmaker the freedom they need to tell a cohesive, coherent story.
Chris Stuckman is currently making a horror movie. In the video, he criticizes Blumhouse by saying that when he watched The Invisible Man, he said, "Whoa, this is a good movie. Where did that one come from?" He said this. He criticizes major studios in Hollywood. In what galaxy, in the known universe, is he trying to get in good with Hollywood with this video? How could you possibly think this? How? Please explain to me in the comments. Do you think that Chris Stuckman standing up for S.J. Clarkson, the director of Madam Web, is going to get him anywhere in Hollywood? Do you actually think that, like, filmmakers are funding films? That they're the ones that fund their own films? No, it is the studios that would be the ones that Chris Stuckman is hoping to work with one day. Chris Stuckman gets literally nothing by defending filmmakers and bashing the studios. The fact that this has to be said and isn't just intuitively known. Like, listen, I'm an idiot. I don't know anything about making films, but it's like I can put two and two together when it comes to this dynamic. And then the other thing that needs to be stated is that he does in fact criticize Madam Web in the video. Like, he explicitly brings up the fact that in the script it was written that the final battle would take place on top of a Pepsi building or whatever. He doesn't think that a screenwriter would be like sitting in a cabin for 10 months thinking of what would be the best place to have the final battle. Yes, it would be on top of a Pepsi building. Like, he's just saying that he criticizes Madam Web in the video. He does it. He does the thing that you say that he doesn't do.
Because when I watched Madam Web, there wasn't a single part of me that thought a writer sat down and came up with the idea of the final fight happening underneath a giant neon Pepsi Cola sign. I just don't think a writer sat in their apartment in LA and thought, that's a good idea. I'm pretty sure Sony said, we have to incorporate Pepsi in some way and deal with it.
And that just brings up the last thing that I want to point out, because I actually made kind of a similar video to this, right? In my review of The Marvels, I brought up that this is a movie that is so bad and so soulless and so devoid of like anything. This is a movie that felt directionless. It felt like all of the performances were bad. And I know that these are not bad actors. You know, I talked about how like I just don't know where the bad directing ends and the misguided studio meddling begins. And yeah, me and Chris Stuckman are like on the same page where Chris Stuckman explicitly says this in the video. I don't know for a fact that this is the case.
No, I'm not saying that's what happened on Madam Web and Morbius and all these movies, but I would not be surprised.
He says it. He says it on the video that he doesn't know for a fact that Sony meddled with Madam Web. He just believes it to be the case because of the myriad of evidence. So, like, I don't know that the director of The Marvels wasn't just a bad director. I just find it hard to believe that a director made that movie. I just find it hard to believe that The Marvels wasn't a product of Marvel Studios not knowing what the hell they're doing, constantly rewriting stuff, constantly redoing VFX, stuff that is confirmed to be a problem with the MCU. It's been reported on. Stuff that we know Sony has done in the past. it's not a ridiculous thing to look at a movie like The Marvels and Madam Web and be like, I simply don't think that we can bash the filmmakers for this. And by the way, we know for a fact how different a movie can feel when taken away from the directors, because just look at the Snyder's cut of Justice League, right? David Ayers has been kind of campaigning to get his own air cut of Suicide Squad, which I'm sure would feel a lot different than what we got in theaters. So I say all of this to say that Chris Stuckman's video is him not saying that film criticism is bad. Again, he has stated before that he understands that there is a place for film criticism.
No, I'm not talking down to film criticism. I obviously did it for, 12 years almost? And I know that it's valuable, I know that it's important, and it's very helpful sometimes.
He just doesn't personally feel like he needs to be the one that does it, which is totally fair. It's not his responsibility to do it. He doesn't consider himself to be a film critic anymore. He never said that that he knows for a fact that the director is blameless. All he has done in his video is looked at the situation of the Sony Spider-Verse movies and come to the conclusion that many of us have come to. This is not a controversial opinion, that Sony is just doing a bad job managing these characters. So yeah, I had to get this off of my chest. I have been going absolutely insane. You can look at my Twitter and I have been unhinged replying to people because, like I said, and this is harsh, but it just is what it is. You either didn't watch the video or you're suffering from some kind of mental illness. Okay, obviously that's me being facetious. Maybe we just disagree. And if that's the case, let me know in the comments down below. What am I missing here? But yeah, I just feel like people have made this Chris Stuckman situation completely overblown. Misinformation on Twitter, things being pulled out of context. Kind of a big issue in today's society, but I've done what I can to maybe quell that a bit. Is this video going to make an impact? God, no. There's the ultimate black pill. Bye.